Hey guys, what day is it? What day is it? Happy Thursday. I don't even know what day it is. It's crazy. So, I'm totally done with the law of attraction. I'm over that. I'm done with it. It's over with. So, back to the familiar. So, I was looking through A Deed Without a Name again by Lee Morgan. Lee Morgan, you're a crazy, amazing, brilliant genius. And I love you. You're incredibly amazing, and I'd probably marry you because you're so adorable in your interviews. I think you guys should really look him up. Lee Morgan on YouTube, and he talks about traditional craft. And he talks about his book, A Deed Without a Name. And that's where we get a lot of, this is unearthing, traditional craft. And so we have the other self, an aspect of ourselves, yet not really part of ourselves, but it is kind of like a familiar. And it goes along with the fetch bride and probably the demon lover. So it's pretty interesting stuff. So, alright. So I equals not. I equals thou. Novalis. There we go. Alright, now, when we begin to open our eyes to the older way of seeing, one of the first things that becomes apparent is how complex the self is. Us, ourselves. Christianity has taught us to think in terms of body and soul, and yet to our pre-industrial ancestors, many of who, though nominally Christian, still thought in the older way. So there were numerous dimensions to the self. Now, when Claude looked at the notion of the free soul in medieval and early modern Europe, he didn't just find that people could leave their body as an animal or were watched over by a fetch bride, but also that people could double themselves, that is, produce a subtler version of their own shape. So this other half is the self that would journey to the Sabbath or meet under the Downy Hills with the people of the fairies. So, it's really interesting. That's really interesting. So, yeah, it's pretty interesting. So, yeah, the familiar is a part of ourselves. In traditional craft it is. So, yeah, that's there. I have come to that conclusion. Kind of like an aha moment in your brain when you're like, aha, I understand that. So, yeah, the fetch at the animal, it's a part of you. It's an extension of yourself. So, just like last night, me and my best friend Kim were talking, and she had a really great idea. She had a really, amazing breakthrough about God. And, I don't believe in God the way that, Christians do, but, I respect and completely understand where she's coming from. And she was saying, how God created everything, but, people don't focus on the earth, and people don't focus on the extension of God. So the extension of God, or, goddess, or, source, spirit, whatever you want to call it, the earth would be an extension of that. So, it was a pretty profound insight, and I was just like, I completely resonate with it. I completely, it's like intoxicating, when we're talking about, information just being so intoxicating, and going outside and just really, digging your feet into the dirt and becoming, one with, an extension of divinity. And I loved it. I thought it was pretty amazing. Alright, so the double is, so this humanoid double of the physical body seems to have been endowed with information and wisdom that everyday self did not have. So, for it is credited with a warning of the person's impending death. So that would be probably like a banshee. The banshee, the screaming banshee. Now, the fact that the witch or fairy doctor or werewolf possessed an other self is the very reason for their power and their changed status both amid the human community and among the host of the dead or people of the fairy. Alright, so that makes a lot of sense, and I really like that concept right there. So it's kind of like when I was little, my cousin ran me over with a four-wheeler and went back and forth on my legs, and my mom instantly gained superhuman strength and picked the back. This is a giant four-wheeler. Four-wheelers are huge, and she picked it up with one hand. The whole entire thing. 3 wheels. 1 wheel was still on the ground, and while she was holding the four-wheeler up, she pulled me out from underneath. So she gained the superhuman strength, and it was insane. So there, I mean, we have that. Everybody knows about that, but that's incredible. But the werewolf had a part animal, part human other self that gave the man certain powers that in his daily, normal human self, he didn't possess. So it is for this reason also that the witch could be considered one of the dead. So are we really here or are we dead? I don't know. No, we're alive as far as I know. I would hope so. Wouldn't that suck if we're just all dead and we didn't know it? Like the others? That would totally suck. Then again, I don't know if it would or not. Where did I go? I don't know where I went, guys. Okay, the dead, yeah, okay, so because the witch's other self acted as a part of the company of the dead and partook of their knowledge. So it is also for this reason also that the fairy doctor was not just considered a fairy doctor, but a fairy, or domas de fuera, doctor of the fairies. So, I mean, it's just so interesting. It is so interesting. This is so magical. Just little phrases like that are magical. So to draw together this thread of older thinking with current occult teachings, Lee, what are you doing here? We might equate this other self with the higher self. Okay, so demonic self or genius. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that in some forms of cultism, the operator seeks to achieve union or knowledge of. So it is possible here to experience some confusion between the other self and the fetchmate, as both have been considered daemons or geniuses in the old sense of these words. I think that's just, it's incredible. It's so full of knowledge and just, I mean, the other self. How, I mean, just us having another self, like doppelgangers, I think it's incredible. I think that is amazing. But that's not what this is. So, now, he says here, I think the easiest way to understand the difference is to point out that in Roman pagan thinking, all things had their own genie, which is a spirit. And every person possessed their own genius. So to some extent, this same thinking can be found among the Greeks in relation to the daemon. Now the sages understood every person to possess both an eidolon and a daemonic self. Not demon, or demonic, or demonic, daemon, like when you get a return email, is mail failure daemon. So, for the uninitiated, the eidolon, much like what is, today called an ego, is all they know, and the daemon appears as an external agency. So, but the goal of initiation is to unite daemon and basically the ego into a whole self. In the language of this book so far, we could equate the ego with what we have been calling the shadow. This is the normal everyday consciousness of the person. So, now the skins are other forms that may be animated by the shadow, but the demonic aspect of consciousness is the most mysterious of all. So subtly working through the shadow at all times, a direct spark of divine fire, the Godhead dimension of the self that few ever become aware of. So that's really, really interesting. I love that concept. I love this concept, and I'm going to have to read this over and over. Now, whilst a demonic self might be ascribed to every human, some experience it only as a guardian angel, and others coming to own it as themselves in a higher form. The original pagan world was more complex than much modern occultism seeks to make it. Not everything that appeared to be a human was demonic between human and godly. So, that's so interesting. Was therefore a manifestation of the higher or demonic self. So, for instance, the muses were their own individual entities, and yet they inspired humans. So the best way to understand this, the best way to understand the other self in witchcraft and the fetchmate, is to say that the other self is like a personal genius or daemon, but the fetch bride, if one has one, is like a muse. So we're kind of, we have the board, and we have everything, on it. We have the crime stuff on it. We have all of the thumbtacks and the nail or the strings now, centering around what a familiar is and where it comes from, which is inside of us. I really like this, though. This is really interesting. So, the worst thing we can do, if we really wish to understand the other world, is to oversimplify what we see. There is a tendency toward classification, to ascribe one fetch beast and one fetch mate to all witches, or for other occultists to claim that all these things are simply aspects of the higher self. Our ancestors did not see things this way. They didn't. No. So, there is plenty of evidence of the subtle differences, if we so much as to look at two examples. One is of Goldie shaman of the Amur Basin in Siberia, one who told ethnologist L. Sternberg how he became a shaman. So here's this person's story on how they became a shaman. So one day I was sleeping on my bed of suffering when a spirit approached me. She was very beautiful. She told me, "I am the protector spirit of your ancestors, the shamans. I taught them how to shamanize. Now I will teach you too." Then she added, "I love you. You will be my husband, for I do not have one now, and I will be your wife. I will give you spirits who will help you in the art of healing. I will teach you this art, and I will assist you myself. If you do not want to obey me, too bad for you. I will kill you." Traditional craft is dark. It's very dark. So, since then, she has never stopped coming to my house. I lie with her as if she were my real wife, but we have no children. She lives completely alone, without relatives, in a little hut on the mountain, but she often changes where she lives. Sometimes she appears as an old woman or a wolf. That way people cannot look at her without being terrified. So that kind of reminds me of Gryla from the woods, from Sabrina. But although this example is from a Goldie shaman rather than a witch, it bears a great deal of similarities with witch testimonies, like the that of Androman, who became the lover of the local fairy queen, who even bore his children. So we have stories of that too. It is clear that both these female spirits are not limited to the shaman or witch that they make visit. Now the Goldie shaman's fetch bride, as we would call it, makes it clear that she worked with his foreparents before him, that she has in fact inherited her, or he has in fact inherited her. So it's a lineage, something that's being passed down through the generations. Thus we can see, like a muse, this entity does not come into existence purely for that practitioner, and it is not simply a manifestation of the person's higher self. In the world of witchcraft, the devil can sometimes be the shadow, which is everyday consciousness, inhabiting the second skin, but at other times it is fully animated by the demonic self, or as can be seen in the following evidence. So here's a little bit of a testimony from a witch on this. So the woman did what she said she would do. And go around the middle of the night. She saw a small old neighborhood woman riding a wolf, and then she saw her enter through a closed door. As the old woman approached the cradle, the mother put the burning iron on her face, and the woman left with a great cry. The next morning, the mother went to the old woman's house, accompanied by some of the neighbors. They forced the gate and arrested the woman with the burned cheek. So, what is interesting about this testimony is that whilst the burn on the cheek proved the connection with the woman herself was confused and had no such memory of carrying out the other function in her sleep. That's kind of creepy. I mean, a little bit. Now, stories of this kind are repeated over and over again, with injuries being done to the double appearing on the body of the person. The level of power of the witch in question will determine whether there is actual memory of what they have done whilst out of their body. So whilst they see the seemingly demonic dimension to the self that is not accessed by ordinary consciousness, may certainly seem other to someone who is unfamiliar with that part of themselves. It is not other in quite the same way as the fetch mate. It's so interesting. So, I mean, it's deep. You gotta really dig and, read it many times and figure out, Now, the Goldie Shaman's Fetch Bride is actually able to say, "I will kill you," and Isabel Godey's Devil is known to hit her with a whip when she disobeys. Ouch. Maybe. All of which suggests the action of an at least partially independent entity with its own will. So that's really interesting. That's really interesting. Now, all of this will sit badly for many immersed in mainstream Western occultism, who will wish to see the demonic self as the higher self, which it's not, whose elevated nature is, of course, shown by it being without form or substance. Therefore, it can be injured with or while inhabiting a skin, or cause injury to the human self. See, that's really crazy. That is crazy. Imagine your double being, hurt, seriously injured, and then you come back and you have, a broken leg. Wow. No wonder I wake up with bruises and stuff. I'm fighting something in my sleep all the time. Anyway, so this kind of thinking about things being without substance is all part of the way that Christian thinking and the many aspects of Platonism that resemble in its so many ways has infiltrated the core of most Western occultism. So being between human and divine means being disembodied, not even possessing a subtle body, and being a higher being. Also up here apparently means, being infinitely benevolent and not threatening to kill the person you work with. So these ideals about the nature of the divine were no part of the vision shared between the shamanic cultures and the elderly witchery of Europe. The spirits in their world were like the forces of nature. In fact, they may well have literally been forces of nature, whereas the spirits as we've come to understand them through the lens of Christianity and other flesh-eating ideologies have become this intellectualized concept of purity and total benevolence. Wow, that's intense. So if we are going to get closer to experiencing the demonic dimension of the self, maybe even partially or wholly merging with the self in flight, and perhaps interacting with the spirit lovers, ancestors, and or animals. So we will need to reconnect with the older sense of what these spirits are. They are something less like your guardian angel and something much more diverse and complex. I love this. I do. This isn't so much, I love this book. You guys should go get it. So they might be like snowfall, like sunshine after rain, like a hurricane, like a scorched earth, like a tempest at sea, like the silent depths of the sea, like a flock of birds taking to the sky, or they might combine far too many of these natural powers to be easily understood by you. But the demonic self, daemonic, not demonic, is something you already know you are or want to be, because it is simply the over-the-hedge part of yourself. And this is really interesting too, because I did a little post and I asked people if they experienced a shift, in your everyday life, if you kind of for a second it feels like everything is just kind of shifting, like you've stepped into some kind of other world for just a split second, and it's like the earth literally shifts beneath you. You can feel it. It feels funny. It feels like you're falling. It's weird. It's a really weird feeling. It's very strange. So that's, hedge riding. So basically that's what that is. So this is a great secret to the full realization of hedge crossing. It is no more or less than being that other, or more properly, merging that demonic other with the second skin, and the differing degrees of depth of trance experienced are simply the different degrees to which you are fully immersed. Skin to demonic self, and demonic self to land spirit. When you are able to see through the eyes of the other, the you that is immortal in possession of far-ranging knowledge and skills, your idea of what trance can become will open out new layers of profoundity. So, here in the realms of recognizing the face of the demonic self, we begin to look at how to go deeper into an otherworldly state, When we go forth from our body, we send our second skin, which we manipulate with the shadow, also sometimes described as breath. Didn't I mention that in the beginning of the video? The next stage is opening up the greater potentials of trance. Is to unite the second skin with not just the shadow, but the demonic self. So this technique, adapted for one used by W.B. Yeats, the renowned poet and occultist, it's actually in the appendix of this book, that aims at it's called donning the mask. So, remember when we did mask magic, guys? That's kind of how I am seeing that. You are taking on those aspects of what you want, or what you possibly need, and then boom, you somehow just transform into it. But yes. Alright guys, so yeah, there's a lot more to familiars than, just that. So we have all these different aspects, which is crazy, and it's confusing. So I'm still learning. 29 years, I'm still learning, and I still have a long ways to go. So, but it's fun. It's a great adventure. It's a great experience. So, alright guys, I don't want to edit the video, so I'm going to cut it short again. It's 20 minutes and people don't want to listen, so I love you guys very much. So yes, just stay healthy, stay safe, all of that good stuff. Sorry for the flashing. I don't like it myself. It gives me a headache. But I love you all very, 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 very much, all the way from Venus all the way back down. So, everybody please be safe and stay healthy, and thank you guys for all your comments and all your input. I love it. I love you guys, and I will see you guys tomorrow. So everybody have a good day and stay safe.